if I could teleport you, time travel back to the 1800s,
would I invent a bunch of
guys,
stuff?
I'm a genius, and they'd be like what? Oh, like iPhones. And they'd be like, make one.
Yeah.
And you're like,
what? Yeah. How? I don't know.
You'd be just as dumb as
just
everybody
imagine
else.
Inventing a light bulb. I don't think
You couldn't.
I don't think you could do it.
You'd be like, we need electricity. What's electricity? Very strange that I have a large nose, and I'll tell you why.
I guess you're privileged to have a big nose then, because you don't live in harsh conditions.
The habanero one? Holy fuck, dude. Woo! You know, maybe I've been treating this bike as some sort of parkour bike when really it's just a...
I once came face to face with a wild rhinoceros. That was pretty crazy.
I got stung by a bee once.
Welcome back to the Burning Boat Show. Now from our new podcast studio. We'll talk about that in a sec. Before we get into it, I just wanted to thank our sponsors on Patreon. If you want to help support this show, you can head to the link below. And any amount really helps us out. We actually were able to get these new microphones from our Patreon sponsors, which is exciting to upgrade. Now we've got...
Look at these mics.
Movable...
You could be up here, you could be down here.
Movable
I can
arms.
move back. Oh
no.
Oh my God. We can break our new sound recorder.
Which we also got.
Wow, that's the first time I leant back. That felt really good. Sorry about that. My God.
Jesus. Well,
that is
welcome
by far
back, everyone.
The most expensive piece of equipment
that we have.
Inevitable.
No, there's so much to talk about. We took a couple weeks break because we were actually moving to our new office.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how else to get into this podcast. We got to start by talking about
the new
what has happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we talked about the fact that we were looking at a place and that we might be signing a contract, but I believe that that's kind of where we left it. Or had we already said, hey, we actually signed the contract and we're moving next week? Well, doesn't matter.
I don't know.
And now we have the Burning Boat office, which we will hopefully be showing you some clips of while we speak about it.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start. It's pretty surreal to be sitting here, I feel.
It is.
To me, this was very much like the first time in the new office when we sit down and record the first podcast.
Yeah.
Was like a we've made it kind of moment.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the visualization part is coming true at the moment.
Well, also kind of perfectly, the last piece, that last item that we ordered, which was the whiteboard, something quite like, okay, whatever. But we kept fucking waiting for this thing. And
there's something about being able to say, okay,
yeah, all the
done.
stuff is here.
We're moved.
This was the plan.
Yeah.
And now it's done. And it is amazing. It went so fucking fast. It's a little bizarre.
It went from like, yeah, we should definitely, I mean, okay, to be real, we've been talking about office
for a long
time. Here. The first thing we talked about on our first podcast or our first YouTube video rather was, okay, we want to get an office. This is temporary. That's our goal.
That was supposed to be season 1.
It's a very concrete thing to go after that like represents a lot of other smaller goals along the way. So it's something we've been talking about for a long time, but only recently have we really been talking about it actually being something we can do. Yeah. And then it just happened so fast.
Yeah, well, it went from, because I was living in this shitty little, I can't complain about it now, the shitty little...
now you can complain about it.
Yeah, apartment. And we had kind of, I had wanted to move last June or July almost. Yeah. I think that's when kind of 6 months were up, or a little bit more than that. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I think I can do another 6 months here, and hopefully we can figure something out.
Yeah.
And that was December.
Yeah.
And then December came, and it was not
we need
quite
a
there.
Little longer.
And it was just
a little longer.
Fuck, this is just gonna go on forever. Like at that point, I'm like, I have to get out of this place.
Yeah.
And if I sign another lease, it's for at least 6 months to a year.
Well, the two really went hand in hand because it was an opportunity for us for you to move, and then for us to move the office
into that
with
apartment.
You.
Yeah, exactly.
And if one happened before the other, someone would be left behind, and we'd have to.
Well,
wait.
almost the office wouldn't have been possible because it would be too expensive for us.
At least it would have been
Well,
a
like
different
maybe a
version.
co-workspace or something.
Something different. But this, I mean,
it went from
this is a real office.
It went from, okay, let's try to do this, to looking at apartments, that being a little bit, it's not a downer necessarily, but it's just very hard to find like the right thing in our price point. We had a couple of things like location, price points, right, that just limited kind of the availability of things.
Things like there has to be a separate room for you to live in, for you to have your own space, and then an office
which is
space.
Purely a tax reason. I can't sleep in the same room as the office.
Otherwise, we can't deduct it.
Right. And then I saw this place. I was like, okay, I'm going to look at it. You were like, okay, I'll come with. Mm-hmm. Looked at it.
And it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then we moved in like a week and a half later.
Yeah. I think we signed.
We looked at it on Thursday evening.
Signed on Saturday.
Signed it on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then we moved in the Saturday after.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, from, hey, there's this place that looks kind of cool. It's covering like most of our criteria. Let's go look at it. Wow. Actually, this is great.
And then it just went nuts. I appreciate it. I like your style of, because I think I'm a little bit like that too. It's like when you have something new, it's like get everything over right, like not in this piecemeal kind of way, and then we'll find a couch, and then we'll find a table, and then we'll kind of
all at once
over a month kind of piece everything together and find, it's like, no, everything almost got done in like the first 3 or 4 days.
So we used the Christiania bike to bike everything over from the old office all in one day, and then the next day we found a couch on like a secondhand,
it's like the
website where you can find stuff for really cheap, and you go pick it up yourself.
Yeah.
Picked up a couch, picked up the table we're sitting at now. Yeah. Did an IKEA order the next day.
Yeah.
Ordered some equipment on Amazon.
Yeah.
Like this.
Like the mics.
And then just waited for stuff to arrive and kept tweaking it. But yeah, I'm very much...
Got a desk from a hardware store.
Yeah, desk.
Just a plank of wood with legs and screwed them together. I'm quite proud that we did not go that route of like, yes, we did end up going to IKEA for some things, but the majority of things are either secondhand or it's like a piece of plywood that we got and put legs onto it.
Yeah, it's true. I like that too. I mean, there are a couple of things that were
like
hard
chairs.
to beat. Yeah,
which we looked for.
We did.
Apparently, people don't really sell chairs that often.
No, they're just surprisingly expensive.
Well, expensive as well.
Yeah. So like the secondhand chairs we're looking at, or
because I think people are selling like their kitchen chairs, which must be quite ooh la la.
Because it's already a big deal for us to be now paying rent for the office, so we're really trying to keep costs to a minimum, and still be able to, fill out the space and make use of it, not just sit in the same situation that we had where we used to be.
Yeah,
but
it all came together, it came together with it's not like we just decided all of a sudden, now we're going to do an office because we're in the same situation as before. Yeah. It's like we had the contracts come through with companies that allowed us to do this. And then even recently now we were kind of like, oh, okay, we're good, but we need to definitely find work quite quickly to keep this thing going.
Well, we've stepped up a level, and so everything kind of needs to step up a level in terms of cash flow and all that kind of stuff.
And where was I going with that?
Well, we got some money from Sket.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going. As if
Sket
like
being the tax authorities here in Denmark.
Angel comes down, right, and is like, hey guys, you've completely overpaid taxes last year, which we suspected, but kind of just wrote off as like, I guess Denmark just has a lot of taxes, and I thought we were going to get something back, but we didn't.
Yeah.
And we got a huge chunk back.
We got basically the amount that we spent on moving.
Right. Because of something that we had fucked up at the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
Which we were well aware of, where we just basically, I mean, it's kind of boring, but...
We've talked about that so many times.
Okay.
But we forgot to pay tax. Well, like we paid ourselves without notifying the tax authorities, and so tax wasn't being added to our...
like tax relief.
Yeah.
So basically, every time you pay yourself, the first 5,000 kroner are tax-free in Denmark.
Yeah.
Every month.
So that's why we thought that it was all... It's not how it is. It's phrased as The first 45,000 kroner you make
exactly.
aren't taxed.
Yeah.
But they do it monthly, which obviously makes sense.
Right.
Now
out of every salary, it's like, okay, this is your untaxed amount.
Yeah.
And then anything over that gets taxed.
Yeah.
And we accidentally paid ourselves outside of the system.
Not accident. I mean, by mistake.
Well, without knowing.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's like, I clicked the wrong button.
Oh.
Like it was on purpose, but unknowingly.
Right,
As
exactly.
soon as we realized it was wrong, we had to like put the money back in the account.
Exactly.
And then pay it out
And then we
again.
had to pay ourselves in one giant sum in 1 month.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they were like, well, only 5,000 is untaxed, even though this is 4 months' salary, for example.
Yeah.
So it should have been 15,000 or 20,000 is untaxed.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Long story.
Came back.
We've got the money back.
It just appeared out of nowhere, and we're like, fuck yeah.
That's very good timing.
It's just perfect timing.
Couple months of rent.
And like you said, it requires stepping up. Now we have more space. We are looking to have a larger cash flow. Does that go nicely into the interns?
Well, I think that's basically why we wanted to get the office.
Yeah.
Right? There are so many things that we weren't able to do in the old space. One of those things being having more people work there.
It's just a lack of space.
There's literally not space.
Yeah.
And it is, our old office is in an apartment, in a home, and it's primarily a home.
Yeah.
And so it's not primarily an office where some people live. It's like everything needs to be very much in this tiny little closet.
Yeah.
And so, we just can't fit more people in there.
It can't fit. And even at some point, I think even with just the two of us, with there being a baby and everything, it just becomes very complicated.
Totally. So it's a
necessity.
must.
Yeah.
It's just nice that it was able to happen
right
straight away.
And then in the back of our heads, we were like, okay, when we get this office, we can, this would be some extra space where somebody else could work.
Yeah.
Sort of this abstract idea.
Yeah.
And then do you want to go into it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We basically, before we had moved, sent out emails to some of the people that over the past couple of months, for some reason, we've been getting emails from people, young, enthusiastic people saying, I found your website when I searched for video production companies in Copenhagen. You guys have some really cool videos. I'd love to come and intern with you.
Yeah.
So we had a list of 5 or 6 people who had literally said, I want an internship with you. So we just wrote them back, a little bit after they had written us saying, well, now we're actually looking for that. Would you like to come by and talk to us? And 2 people were like, yep, let's do it. And came by and we had a little interview / meeting / just saying hello.
Yeah.
And we found an intern who we are very
Our
excited
first
about.
intern.
Yeah. I just feel like it's, what was it? It was like a week and a half ago now that we spoke to Dario.
Yeah.
I don't really know that much about Dario, but I just got such a good vibe from meeting him. And I think one of the things we had talked about a lot was we were looking for someone with the right mindset more than we're looking for someone with the technical skills or the background that we have. Yeah. That's not what we need. Anyone can learn the programs, learn how to use a camera or learn whatever.
Yeah.
But who has that mindset that we feel like we can use for something more than just someone who takes care of some tasks. What are they able to bring that we don't have?
Yeah.
And Dario just had such a good positive energy and was so enthusiastic, and it just made me even more excited about it.
Yeah.
And so we had planned to talk to some more people, but we were like,
fuck it.
Honestly, let's just go with this. This is it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
So we called Dario the next day and said, hey, well, let's do it.
Starting next week.
He's literally starting next week.
Yeah, and that is, I think, a huge
milestone.
Huge step.
And there's something about it's not just the 2 of us then.
Yeah. And we've had 3 people before.
We have. But
that was
right
at
when
the
we started.
very beginning of the company, where it was, basically we were a YouTube channel more than a company, I would say, at that point.
Well, we weren't even registered as a company.
Right.
And we weren't making any money.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah.
But we were trying, and we were doing free videos.
Yeah.
So there was some structure. But it was, it was literally Robin, who was here with us for a month. actually arrived in Copenhagen before you moved here.
Right.
That just gives you an idea of how early days it was. Speaking of Robin, though,
sounds like he also might be joining us.
This guy is considering coming to Copenhagen.
This guy
to help us again, which is, I mean, the thought of 4 people working in Burning Boat.
Yeah.
That sounds bizarre to say.
It does. But now it feels so much more, I mean, not that it didn't before, but now it really feels like we have a need for more people. There's huge bottlenecks in a lot of areas of what we're doing.
There's so many things that we don't have time for, that we just don't do.
Or we have to do, and then
other stuff doesn't get...
Exactly. So we're starting to create some lists and really see how we can turn this internship into something massively
beneficial to the company,
to ourselves, as well as hopefully to himself. And I think we also spent some time talking about that, just how we can have it be a symbiotic relationship.
Right, because it's an unpaid internship, which is important.
Which is also why it's so important that a person who does that is motivated and excited and wants to do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to us feeling like we're pulling teeth trying to get people to help us with stuff, you know?
I mean...
And the thing is, I understand it because I myself am that to a certain level, you know?
Am what?
Am that kind of person who would have also probably reached out to a director or somebody and said, I'll just work for free. I'll just give me a month or 2 with you and let me get some credits, or let me just learn from you. Because I think that is the best way to kind of move up in this industry. And seeing something, that proactive nature of seeing something that you like and reaching out and being like, you know, I'll do anything. I'll get coffee every morning. I'll do whatever just to be around this setting so I can get my foot in the door, whatever.
It says a lot.
I think so.
That's what I'm getting at with the whole mindset. It's like, that you can't teach.
No.
That's something really special.
Yeah. And I think he seems like a very smart fellow. Be fun to have around. I think it's also just cool to have like more people, you know, us two. Of course, I love you and I love hanging out with you and working with you. And I think adding another person, it just makes that dynamic even better. More things to bounce off of.
I'm so excited. I mean, a huge thing about starting a business for me is the idea of creating your own community.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking long term when I say that. And just to be moving actually in that direction.
Yeah.
With something real and concrete.
Yeah.
Being 2 people coming in.
Yeah.
Now it's more. That's why I'm like saying that it's 4 people. It's like that's like a fun group.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like,
and more room for discussion.
Yeah,
and more because sometimes we discuss.
I think it's gonna literally do something.
Yeah, really.
I think it could make. I don't know. I don't think we know what this is gonna do.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, I was reading in my farm book, which we'll talk about later, but they talk about digging wells, and they talk about it is more efficient to build a slightly bigger well because it has to be bigger if there's 2 people in it as opposed to 1. It is faster and way more efficient, though. It's not only twice as fast, it's much faster for 2 people to be involved. Maybe that analogy doesn't go to 3 people, but that sort of idea, again, that it is this exponential thing. It's not just like 3 times the amount of work. It's way more.
It's a lot more than that.
Right.
It's the combination of certain things being done at the same time that allow for new opportunities to occur that are, we don't know how much more important.
Right.
Both in terms of creativity or even just how much money we're making.
Yeah.
And the kind of jobs we're able to do.
And really speeding up the process, because I found that one thing we're quite slow at is that we kind of have to, if we're focused on one company, it's very hard for us to be focusing on the company and working for them and also be taking care of another company at the same time in terms of like pre-production and stuff.
Very much one at a time.
We're very slow at that, but it's because we're only 2 people. So I think, again, having more people will just allow us to take on more projects at the same time.
Yeah.
Just so that we can...
well, I mean, there's something about, we're not looking, like if we know our schedule is completely packed with having to film and edit for these companies.
Yeah.
We're not actively going out to keep finding more clients because we know that we don't have time to do it.
Right.
But that might change. And it is, because like that's part of what we're doing right now, is finding more clients, kind of trying to set up for this opportunity that we have.
Right. Working a little bit more in parallel than sort of series.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is good to touch on is the something we've also tried to talk with the two guys about, Dario and Robin, is this idea that them coming in could create the cash flow that would allow them
to be employees
later.
Yeah.
That is not a guarantee in any way.
And we should be clear,
That's the
we're
concept,
being
right?
as upfront as possible about all of this.
Yeah.
There is no guarantee for anything going forward.
No.
Right? But obviously,
but that being
they
said,
must see potential
exactly,
as well, right?
That's the point. It's like there's this idea of being able to talk about something that isn't there yet, but draw on your experience and what has happened in the past, and also just a little bit of common knowledge and common sense, and like that could very likely happen.
Yeah.
But it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Me too.
And what it does is it causes us to think differently, because I don't like to say that there's more at stake, because that's not necessarily what I feel. It's like there's more opportunity. So, okay, what can we do to make more money, to create more cash flow?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not often what you think. Sometimes you get stuck in just kind of focusing on the project you're working on. And another thing about what we do is we have a creative business, which means that we have to keep jumping between like thinking business and thinking creatively, which are very different things.
Yeah.
And putting yourself in positions like that, like, okay, let's do it. Let's get an office, and that means we need to be making more money.
Yeah.
And let's get interns. And obviously we want to keep growing. So let's make more money so that we can hopefully eventually pay them.
Yeah.
What can we do to make more money?
Yeah.
It's a simple thought, but it's like not always something that comes naturally. It's like you have to set yourself up for those thoughts to occur.
Yeah.
And it suddenly becomes like, oh, right, there's a lot that you can do to try and make more money. It's like it forces you to think a little bit more innovatively. So we're talking about, and half of these things are probably crappy ideas, right? But how could we, right now, with what we have, whoa, you're doing the thing again. Yeah. The whole thing is moving. Get more cash flow running through the business. So things like, okay, we've got this nice podcast set up now.
Yeah.
Would it be an idea to maybe try and rent it out to other people?
Talked about that.
Anything sounds like a good idea until you can actually execute it.
Yeah.
And like, what does that entail, and how much work actually goes into that? But now that we have two other people who have a little bit more time on their hands to do stuff like that.
Right.
Maybe you set up a website and you take some pictures, and you have an Instagram page for that side business, if you can call it that. And you just see if you can get some people to like come and record a podcast, and maybe they like it. Maybe they tell their friends, oh, there's this super accessible place that you can just go in and record a podcast.
Yeah.
They've got nice equipment. They'll even edit it for you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost that much. It's like, it doesn't hurt to think about it, at least.
It's almost like it just opens up room for more ideas, in the sense that if you went out and did that, it would feel like a little bit of a waste of time, because we have other things to be doing. But if you have this extra, it allows you to be like, well, let's try this. Let's spend 2 days doing this.
Try it, because that's what you need.
We've
right?
got other people covering other things, so we can kind of
It's really good.
take a couple more risks.
It's the same with editing. It's like you need time to fuck up and do shitty edits that don't make sense and that went too far.
Yeah.
Because you need to find the right thing that does work.
Right.
The creative way of doing it that actually enhances the whole edit.
Yeah.
But you need the extra time to mess up or to come up with bad ideas first. But if you don't have that extra time, you have to go with what you know, and you have to go with like something generic, because you can't risk having something bad.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same thing. It's like it gives you room to, or what could we do to make more? And it's not such a big time commitment, or it's not that much at stake if it doesn't work out.
Right.
Another thing would be we got these rolls of paper that we'll show. Well, we probably showed you already earlier in the podcast, which roll down. And so we've got like a full photo studio in the corner of our office. Like, what can we use that for that we aren't already? Like, just product photography.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could do a side business that's just product photography. Same idea. I don't know. But I'm sure if you wanted to, you could make that into a business.
Yeah.
Just the same way that we made.
The world is our oyster.
But then we already have the stuff.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's just getting more clients.
Yeah.
Which is always a good route, which is the only thing that we currently do,
Mm-hmm.
which is, well, we've got to make more money, so we got to find another client.
Yeah.
But on top of that, something we've already been doing with the last couple of clients is something, I don't like the term upselling, but basically what else can we sell them on top of the video that we normally sell them?
Yeah.
Like extra content in the form of social media edits from the main edit, or photos that we take separately, or selling the raw footage because people kind of want that anyways. So why not just sell it to them?
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a way of trying to make a little bit more money, and then
Which we've been doing.
and it's been working.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got things like our Patreon. Like, how can we make more of that? What can we put on Patreon to keep that something that people are, like, actually looking at?
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it that we had said. Social media is something that is just not our
thing,
bread and butter.
Yeah.
We don't really enjoy doing it. Although I think we would enjoy doing it if that was kind of the only thing we're doing. I think it's like it being the secondary nature and like, oh, I got to take a photo of this to make sure we have something to put on Instagram and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That part doesn't really excite me. But I think putting somebody in charge of kind of showing what's happening at Burning Boat, and that involves everybody working there, all the things that are going on, we had talked about doing kind of smaller pieces for social media, which is great, again, for someone else to be doing. Like, hey, try to get 6 interesting shots with the probe lens today for social media, which is, again, something I would love to do, but it would never make sense.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
Because you'd be like, yeah, that makes us money kind of in the long term of like growing our social media and blah, blah, blah. Like right now, there's 5 other things that are way more important.
Yeah.
So I think that's exciting. And we've always said that it's not very fun to promote yourself in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
Not the biggest fan of taking videos or photos of myself and putting them up. Although I don't mind having someone else being in charge of that and kind of just deciding for themselves if they want to put something up or not.
I'm excited about the idea of coming up with a concept to use social media for that we don't or that we haven't thought of yet. Something that's like, what if we did this? And wow, I hadn't even thought of that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And you can kind of do that.
Yeah.
And we've got this Patreon page that we haven't had anyone visit since we started it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's our fault for not putting stuff on it and for not using it. Yeah. I feel like that's also something that we can get a lot more out of if we tried. Yeah. So that's also something that's exciting. Yeah. And then we had the idea of, we've talked about all this before. We wanted to do some more Burning Boat merch. Mm-hmm. Also not really time to do that, but now we can do that. We're trying to make our way into the fashion industry at the moment.
Yeah, fashionistas.
And not making clothes. I mean, making videos for brands. Let me just get that clear. We're not trying to become a fashion brand.
Have you seen our sweatshirt?
Have you seen this? No, we've just been talking to a couple of brands, and some of the brands are just starting out. Yeah. And so payment is a little bit of an issue for some of these brands. Maybe we can do some kind of collaboration where we actually use their, I'm just thinking of this now, use their connections or even their product and have them make some merch for us that we can then sell.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Or maybe it's a bad idea. It's an idea.
That's a great idea. No, I think that is a
there
good
are ways.
idea and mirrors.
There are ways, right? That's my point.
Yeah.
It's like it's not this like black or white. Oh, you can't pay right now. Okay, that means no. Like
right. It depends.
Depends.
If we're very passionate about something, obviously we're willing to stretch ourselves a little bit to make something happen. In many ways, the same as the intern towards us, we do the same to companies that we think
that we really see some potential to, and like it would be amazing to be working with this.
This is a real thing. If you see a small company and you talk to the guy and you're like, I really like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of catching this company at their. You see the potential. It's not like a selfless,
Yeah.
You see the future potential.
Yeah, I'm not going like I'd like to help you out. And,
Right. Well, it's partly,
but it's like
but
I
also,
could see it going somewhere,
Yeah.
and I could see getting something out of this in financial terms later on, and that for now it might be enough to just get something out of it on a.
Exactly.
Be nice to work with someone that you.
And it gets you excited. To see things.
Yeah. But then I also meant like, where do we get our merch from? And like we were talking about getting the nice fabrics.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a lot of work. I don't know if there's an answer. Maybe like you don't have to do it. You just get someone else to do it.
Yeah.
You've already got everything.
Yeah.
Have a sustainable message as well. So it's probably also going to be sustainable clothing.
Well, we learned at the fashion trade show that sustainable really is a bit of an overused word.
Yeah,
these
that can
days.
mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole nother thing.
But anyways, we'll start making $100 sweatshirts, $300 sweatshirts. How much were those that we really liked? The good material.
I don't know.
I think they were like, he said $100 or something.
The one that we're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't actually remember the price at all. But I think the point is that there's so much potential.
Yeah.
From taking these steps that we've taken.
For everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where else? Maybe there is, but I question where else can you go and work for a company where you can get your hands on all this equipment to have the availability, the insurance behind it, everything kind of at your fingertips, and you're going to be involved in every aspect of the filmmaking process, where you're going to be able to soak up as much as possible, as opposed to like a sort of a large company where it's like, you do this thing because in the union, this is what you're working towards, and you're going to get really good at this one thing, and that's what, So I think if people are interested like we are in kind of getting away from that and being more like, I want to have my hands in a lot of different jobs or whatever it's called on a filmmaking set, it's kind of a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's accessible now. It's like, okay, if they want to, I don't know, create their own hat and do a product shoot for it, it takes them 30 seconds to put down the backdrop, get up some lights, come in on the weekend and shoot it themselves.
I think one thing that having interns is also already doing for us, and they're not even here yet, just the thought of it, is structure from us. Having more of like, because we need to be able to, there's 100% an amazing aspect of having your own business and being able to be flexible.
Yeah.
And that's obviously not going away. But there's also a lot of benefit to structure. And I think that having more people involved requires more structure and planning.
Yeah.
And that actually is really
It's good.
beneficial. Things like I was reading a book on like a business book called Profit First, which we've talked about, which talks about simple things that you can do to just have a better grasp on money coming in and money going out of your business and what you actually have available to you. Because to give you an idea, before like a couple of weeks ago, we have one bank account, all our income lands there.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, we have this big chunk of sometimes a very big chunk of money in there, and
sometimes very little.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to, at a glance, get a sense of what that actually means because, 20% of it is actually for sales tax. Another 10% of it is for employee tax.
Yeah.
And this money is actually going to go towards rent now.
Right.
And we know that we pay ourselves this amount every month. And so really we only have nothing. to spend extra.
Right.
Everything's already allocated to something, but it becomes a little bit hard. And I think the human brain is kind of wired that way. It's kind of like if you have a big plate, you're going to put more food on it.
Yeah.
You just see what you see, even though you know that, oh, it's just a bigger plate. And if you have a smaller plate, you're going to put less food on it. And so some of the concept laid out in this book, which I'm pretty excited about having started to implement, is getting more checking accounts in your bank account so that you can actually straight away, when you get the money in, put it into its designated place. And so you can see that actually this big payment of, say, 100,000 kroner leaves you with actually only 10,000 of money that you can spend on things within the business. So you're already putting money into your
salary.
You're already putting the money you're going to pay for taxes. The other important thing is the concept of profit, which I think is something that we're still kind of trying to figure out what that really means.
Yeah.
And like,
who the fuck would want profit at the end of the year? I don't understand.
Well, I think it has to do with what are you trying to accomplish with having a business? And I think there's a lot of answers to that, and we might even have different answers, or at least more layers to the answer. Like for me, it's both to have to be working with what I love, but it's also to provide for my family. And so having profit, which the profit goes to the owners, is something.
Does it?
Yeah. That's the idea of a business getting profit, is that money then goes to the people who have a stake in that company.
But what's the difference between us having profit at the end of the year as opposed to us just having larger salaries throughout the year?
I'm not quite sure.
Right. That's what I just don't understand. Because I understood it as, when we took this business course, that was total bullshit, however many months ago.
Yeah.
Almost a year ago.
Yeah. That
you get taxed on your profit as a business at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then what is the profit? I don't understand. If it's not a company expense, if it's not part of your salary, the only thing it's used for is like bonuses and stuff at the end of the year.
I think
and it's taxed at, I guess, a slightly lesser rate than if. But then wouldn't you have to pay taxes on that? Isn't that basically still an income, or does that just get taxed slightly less because it's a bonus?
Slightly less.
You sure?
Well, I mean,
you're just assuming.
It has to be, right?
Right.
I
don't know.
You're right.
I mean,
why
that's
would
my
anyone
question.
want to make profit? If you could just kind of like use it throughout the year here and there.
I don't know.
But I think what's interesting about
because that would almost mean that if we could pay ourselves less throughout the year, but say we're saving this as profit at the end of the year, and we can just pay it out to ourselves at 25% tax rather than 37%, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, but that's also
then
very hard
more
to do.
People do that?
But then you'd have to pay yourself less. It's not like we're paying ourselves extravagantly. We're paying ourselves
is that why
the amount that we
Steve
can
Jobs
afford.
Is paying himself $1, and he's like, I'm paying myself nothing, but at the end of the year, actually, he's taking a massive bonus or something.
I am not an expert.
Yeah,
I have no idea. But I think there's some interesting things to be looking at, because what I got from it, more than what you end up using the profit for, is the psychology behind setting aside profit as the first thing, even if it's just 1%, taking that out of your income, saying 1% is going into profit, and we have 1% less to run the business with. Of course we can do that. We can cut 1% down, but the idea would be to increase that a little bit as you go on, every quarter, for example, increasing it by a couple of percent until you reach a point that maybe it's 10 or 15%. And I'm not exactly sure why that number, but that it forces you to run a company in a more innovative way. How can you make up for that? Are the things that we actually don't need that we're using kind of like just because it's there? The idea of, if you have a bigger plate, you're just going to put more on it. Maybe if you made your plate small, you might find more ways to do the same thing for cheaper or even better, because you haven't even thought about it in the first place. That's what I really like.
I see.
That it's a way of kind of thinking differently from the very beginning. Right when you get your money, we're not going to touch this. We're going to put this in tax. We're not going to touch this.
I like it a lot.
This is what we have.
Yeah.
And it's very clear.
Yeah.
And
especially
it's just structured.
I think especially, I don't know how it works in other countries, but in Denmark, when we get paid an extra 25% on top of our, so we give an invoice and they pay, and we give an invoice and the invoice includes an extra 25%.
It's a sales tax.
As a sales tax, right? Which we get paid. But we, at the end of 3 months, have to pay that extra money back to the government.
Basically holding on to the government's money for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which
made it very strange. Like you said, psychologically, you would get a payment and you'd look at the bank account and you'd be like, oh, great.
So much money.
We're fine. And then be like, no. Remember that this amount is actually not even ours.
It's not
Shouldn't
ours.
even be sitting in this account.
Yeah. And we know that, but because you can't see it, it does make a difference.
It kind of fucks with you.
Because as soon as we set that up and we put the money into these different accounts, we were like, oh, fuck. Okay, we can't buy that thing that we were just talking about.
Right, exactly.
Like 2 minutes earlier, it's not like we don't know that we have to pay that money. But because we couldn't see it in the account, we were talking about buying an expensive audio recorder.
Yeah.
And then
Which we still ended up buying.
Yeah, but we went and we found it secondhand for half the price.
Yeah, we did.
And so we
more than half,
innovated
less than half the price.
on a micro scale and got something for cheaper. That's 100% going to have the same effect on the business as something that's an asset, a piece of equipment that's going to allow us to do this, and this, and this. You know, there's good reasons for why I wanted to get it in the first place.
It's good. I had never heard about the multiple sort of, what do we have, 4 accounts now?
5.
Right. We have 5 now?
Yeah. So we've got an income, which is where all the money comes in.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Yeah.
You don't take money out of it. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Then you put the money into an owner's pay.
Yeah.
Tax.
Yeah.
We've got the profit.
Yeah.
And then you're left with operational
expendables.
Expenses.
Okay.
Things that you need on the go. Traveling or getting
whiteboard markers.
I don't know, something broke. We need to replace it.
Yeah.
And if we don't have the money, too bad.
Yeah.
You know, like we got to figure something else out.
Which is something that used to bother me a lot. Is that
This, like,
you'd be like, no, remember
we don't
that
know
there's this
what
month.
we actually have.
Yeah,
kind
right.
Of like,
yeah. Well, we do, but
but
Yeah.
Clearly,
it's
it
like
has an
your
effect.
mom giving you $10 and being like, you can only spend $7.50, and I'm going to come back in 3 months and ask for that $2.50 back. Unless you set it aside. Once it's in a one bill, it's like, it's a little bit.
It sounds
annoying.
silly.
It's honestly annoying.
Talking about it,
I don't know
sounds
why
silly. Like, why can't we just know that it's not there? But honestly,
My
feel like it
question
makes
is
a difference.
why is it not balanced in hindsight?
I don't know.
Right? It just feels like there's a lot of room for people to fuck up, and then for the government to go. It's gonna sound a little conspiratory, but it's like, then you pay what was it, like 8% interest?
If you're late on your payment back to the government, you have to pay an interest of 8% plus a fee.
Right. It just sounds very strange to me. Like,
so I guess they're getting money from people who.
I'm sure they make a shit ton of money.
Yeah. Then we also talked about how okay, well, actually, is it basically like the government is giving people
a loan,
3-month loan every quarter?
Basically,
which allows you to potentially spend more money than you have as long as you make it back.
Right.
And
a little bit of
use
risk.
That to your benefit.
Yeah.
It's also true.
Yeah.
But I think it's just something that we haven't been thinking about so much, and I think it's another tool. It's another way of like, how can we make the most out of what we have?
Yeah.
And also, we need to be making more, or we need to cut costs more. What can we get rid of, and how can we make more here? What new thing do we need to start doing to make more? Because we can see, this is where the money is going.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need this subscription because we haven't used it in 3 months.
Yeah.
Maybe we just get it again the next time we need it.
Yeah, that's actually very true.
Stuff like that. So,
good.
Improving. I mean, so this is another thing that I was immediately reading this and I was like, why can't you do that for yourself as well as an individual? Personal finance. Split up your bank account into, this is what I spend on rent. This is what I, on average, spend on food. So I'm going to have a grocery account. I know that I spend this much on pet food and this much on transportation. And this is what I'm left with to kind of like guilt-free spend. I can go to the movies with this. I can, or not.
Right.
How much am I going to put in my savings account? How much am I going to put into an investing account? And I started reading about personal finances, which I've read about before, But it's always been a little bit like, oh my God, there's so many things, like terms that I'm not quite sure of what those mean. And it just feels like a bit intimidating to even start really considering seriously.
Yeah.
But I feel like now I've read a couple of books. I'm starting to get some of the terms. It's like, oh, okay, now I can actually follow along a little bit and actually take some steps towards doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
It just got me thinking, like, why don't we learn this stuff in school?
Yeah.
Why aren't we taught this? This is like fundamental stuff on how to survive as an adult with money in the modern world. It's not complicated.
No.
It's simple things like splitting up your money, paying back your debt. Saving for things.
Yeah.
Just say, like, I've never saved for anything.
No, me neither.
It's not true for Boris and Johan.
Yeah, but I didn't put it into a savings account. Yeah, I save for things all the time then under that, but like the idea of like, I'm going to put my money away for 40 years from now.
Yeah,
you know
it's also a little extreme, but I mean, yeah, okay, I've saved for stuff in a very like abstract, so like I've saved for something for a little bit.
Yeah.
Not like
short term.
I know that I'm going to want to do this later on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we're talking about.
Right.
For a lot of people, for example,
kids
paying for a big or paying for a big wedding or something.
Yeah,
That's not something I personally am interested in, but that's something that a lot of people that's what I want.
Yeah.
So why don't you start saving for it now?
Yeah. I think it's very hard just psychologically for us to accept that yes, drops of water will slowly start to fill up a bucket. It's like, that's not gonna fucking do anything. I'm not gonna.
Might as well not.
Right.
And that's just because it's ignorance. You don't know how it works. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, you're right. We're not taught that in school.
Yeah,
I don't know anybody. Well, I'm sure there are people
fault.
with multiple bank accounts and stuff. I know about savings accounts and stuff. I've never had one.
I do.
Very nice.
Now.
Yeah.
And the next step is trying to get into investing on a very basic, totally risk-free way. Not like I'm going to start trading stocks.
Oh.
It's like long-term investments into
indexes,
index funds and bonds and stuff like that, which is like, just reading about it, you're like, I have no idea what that even means. To me, investing is like gambling.
Yeah.
The word investing has that connotation in my head.
I think there is gambling within investing.
Yeah, but it's just, it shows me when I'm reading it that I don't know I don't know anything about this. And it's like, why do all of the most successful, wealthy people use their money that way? Like, what does it mean to become financially free or financially independent? I can't remember the exact term. That means to have enough money that the money you have is making the money that you need to live on a yearly basis.
Ah.
I didn't know that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So the amount of money that you have in an investment account is generating the amount of money you spend yearly. So you don't actually have to do anything.
So it's like, do they give any numbers?
It depends on what your lifestyle is.
Or for the average household?
I don't know.
Yeah. But then at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, you look and you have the same number basically.
Well, ideally, it's still increasing.
Right, but theoretically, it could just be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just really. It's just a lot of. I think it's just some. Why aren't we taught it? Like, why don't we know? Why isn't it something that? I just feel a little bit like I kind of came across this randomly.
Yeah.
In the same way that I was talking about sleep the other week.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we taught? Why don't we know? Why isn't this common knowledge? Sleep and sleeping habits.
Yeah.
Other things like Phoebe has a lot of student loan debt.
Yeah.
And just by looking at the numbers for like 10 minutes, you can see that by paying back the debt at the amount that they kind of set it at the beginning, you pay this back monthly based on the amount.
Outrageous, huh?
No, it's that they set it low on purpose so that it'll take you more years to do, which means you'll have to pay more interest on the money that you loaned, which means you end up paying thousands more because you're paying it back slower, and so that costs you more.
Wait, so is it if you pay more, do they charge you less interest?
Yeah, because you're paying it back quicker.
I see.
So like, well, obviously if you're not in a position to be paying back more, like fine, you pay as much as you can.
Yeah.
But like, be aware that if you are able to pay more, pay more. It's going to save you literally thousands in a couple of years. It's like, why? Yeah. Felt very much like, that's an amazing piece of information that I just felt like I randomly came across.
Yeah.
That we should take seriously and look at. Like,
of course.
Let's do that. Let's make sure that we're paying the amount.
Is that just an option that's kind of given to you, or when you first choose how you want to pay it off, you're kind of presented with that, but maybe you don't even know what that means?
I think there is. I didn't get a student loan myself, so I'm not entirely sure. But from what I understand, it's kind of like there's a set amount based on, okay, you're making this amount at your job.
Yeah.
And so we're going to set it at 5% of
based on your
income.
Gotcha.
But you can go in and you can change it.
Gotcha.
You can pay back in one go. Hey, I want to pay it right now.
Yeah.
Let's set that up.
Yeah.
They'll also, because Phoebe's currently not working, she's still at home with the baby.
Yeah.
So she's not paying anything back.
Right.
Well,
even better.
For them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really quite shocking sometimes to me as well. Like when I went to, because first of all, you're not taught anything about finance unless you kind of choose to take those subjects in your school. And even then, I mean, I took economics. I don't really feel like I learned anything about personal finance. And then you get thrown into the real world as an 18-year-old. In America, you go to school, or like, it sounds like even Phoebe and stuff, you're taking those loans on at a time where you don't really understand what the consequences of that is.
Yeah.
What is that a good rate? Is that a bad rate? Is, you know, whatever. And then there's things like taxes and all. I remember just being like, what the fuck is all of this stuff that I have no idea even how to like.
The thing is,
it is all quite simple. If they just sat down and were like, over the course of 12 years, we got to make sure that you understand kind of these core concepts that are just going to be helpful in life.
Yeah.
Because you can't expect everyone's parents just to be in charge of that.
No.
Because there's I always find there's a very strange transition from like teenager to adulthood where suddenly you're an adult, but you feel like you don't know what an adult should know. You're starting to do these things that are very adult, but you're like, I don't fucking understand any of this. Like car insurance, like all these little things, even like with your taxes, like what can you write off? What can you not write off?
Yeah.
Acquiring loans for wanting to do a small business or something. Like all that stuff would just be completely over my head of like, how do I even approach that? And then obviously way less people are going to be.
And that thought is what deters you to begin with.
Right. Unless you have like a aunt who started her own company and is like, oh, this is how I did it. This is how you can kind of, you know, obviously I'm sure they also teach that in business school, but I feel like everybody should kind of know that to a certain extent.
Definitely the personal finance stuff. It's like, just take care of your money and know what is going where and how to, just simple things that optimize what you have. And
yeah, I think there's a lot. It's very strange. I mean, I would be curious to see, just to know, how did the school system come about? Where did it come from? Who kind of decided, you know, these subjects in this? Because there seems to be like a standardized system. Obviously, there are other schooling systems out there and stuff, right?
For sure. Well, I kind of know a little bit.
Right, because you were talking about Montessori and stuff.
Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure when I came across this, but I think that the modern schooling system was developed after around the Second World War time, when they needed people to be learning certain skills that were useful during wartime, and had a certain mindset of creating societies that were very good at having people working in factories and staying in their lanes and being good at these specific things and not asking too many questions,
right? And
kind of doing what they were told to do,
right?
I mean, obviously it sounds super conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I'm sure there's no guy thinking that, but obviously.
Yeah. But, you know, the whole idea of sitting down at a desk, everyone needs to be quiet. You listen to the teacher. Yeah. Don't talk out of turn. Yeah. And we're going to learn these subjects. Yeah. And that's kind of final. You kind of come out of it with I mean, we went to very different schools.
Me and you?
Yes. Like I'm saying, like going to international schools.
Oh yeah.
We're encouraged to have conversations with our peers and to present to the class and to learn critical thinking and all these things. I'm talking like
but
American
my point
public
is still
schools, for
that
example.
It's still limited to very specific subjects.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a liability thing. For example, like anything mental health related or anything like that. Like, or like sex related, right? You have like a course that you go through and stuff, but it's not really, it's very much facts. It's very much like, I don't know, if you just don't take it seriously when you're that young, but it doesn't feel like real life kind of applied, you know? So personally, I don't feel like I have any tools to deal with my own sort of mental health issues and stuff.
No, I think that's something that's becoming more important in the schooling system currently.
And I feel like it's so important. Like that's almost something that you could be taking courses throughout your entire schooling, so you have some sort of grasp on, anything to do with that.
That's an interesting question of like.
But I don't know if it's a thing where it's like nobody could say, this is how you're going to deal with it, because then if somebody kills themselves, God forbid, or something, then the school gets sued because they gave some sort of, or does it go into the sort of, we don't want religion in school? And a lot of times, sort of being present, being in the now, that sort of can kind of be conflated as being very close to religious
but I think
teachings.
That's exactly what's changing, is that the science behind all this stuff is becoming a lot more prominent than it is like, oh fuck yeah, okay, we have to, this is something we can definitely teach. Our core concepts, things that everyone can do.
Or for example, meditation.
Yeah, well, we talked about that.
I feel like it's something that in school would be like, somebody would show up one day and like give a speech on it or something, but it's not something you actually like. I feel like you could have a full course in like meditation, and scientifically you could show that this is helping students with anxiety, with stress, with all these things. That it just makes no sense to me that you wouldn't make that a top priority of like changing school systems to be a little bit more.
I think that is what is happening.
Life lessons. Of course, science, math, language, all those things are still important, but they're not the only things.
But that was my question was, so what do you do? Do you make the school day longer to account for additional subjects that are deemed equally important? Or do you kind of get rid of some subjects, or at least limit them? Or what, do you figure out a way to speed the process up with certain subjects to make room for these new ones?
Yeah.
What do you do? It's probably,
I'm no expert.
More of an issue than, well, actually we know that these things are important.
I think it's the thing, like you said, with the plate. You could find 1% of time in school to adopt towards something very different from what is currently being taught. And I think you could slowly open up that gap. And I think you would find that, at least again, my experience, it's not 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., just 100% efficiency of teaching things that are, the exact things that I need to know for life. I think you could go through a curriculum and find things that are probably not that useful anymore in our modern
not
lives.
As useful. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of students would say going through high school, there is a strong feeling of like, am I ever going to use this in the real world? And I would say some of the things are just good to know. And it might feel like they're not useful in the real world, but they're concepts and whatever. But then I would also
ways
say
of thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just critical thinking and challenging yourself and stuff.
Even math, which for me was one, I was like, I'm never going to be fucking using any of this.
Yeah.
But the way that you're forced to think and use your brain, that's to me what I can kind of see as being right.
Yeah.
You're problem solving. You're learning a process that you can apply to something way more abstract.
Right. That is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I would also say you could probably do a little bit less calculus and find some room to put in some other things.
Yeah. To teach.
At least maybe give the choice, or, have something open up. Although I think it should almost be
there's certain
mandatory.
things that's like, well, you have to learn about this. To function in our society, you need to know how to manage your own money.
Because what you're fucking focused on at that point, you're taking extra classes for like the PSAT, which is like an intelligence test. But you're learning specifically how to be better at this intelligence test.
Yeah.
That's exactly a point at which I would say there is time for other things because we're so obsessed with like getting the right score to get into the right college to get into the,
Maybe just the idea of tests entirely.
Yeah.
To be tested on something and be able to recount facts and things. Like testing is something that's difficult to do, I think. And invites a certain kind of learning that maybe isn't as useful as it could be. This idea of memorizing information rather than really understanding it.
Right.
Being able to perform at a certain designated time under certain rules.
Right.
In like a test format or an
Which
exam.
is why I liked math and physics, because the higher you went, the more it became about not memorizing equations. They would give you the equations. It wasn't like you have to come in and know all these.
It's
like you have to know how to use them.
Yeah, right.
Which is very much just... And there was a huge gap between when I went to public school in California in my senior year. I started to appreciate the old way of doing tests at FIS and stuff, because in California it was purely multiple choice for every class. So
yeah,
it's
that's
almost
saying that our schools were very good.
Yeah,
and there's not the one like there's a lot of great.
They're very good, but you can
examples
still complain.
Yeah, sure.
Or not complain, but I'm like I still think there's room for improvement and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like multiple choice is just purely sort of a recognition part of your brain. Like, oh yeah, I remember that. But if you asked me just purely the question without the options, it's way harder to, know that. And I'm like, what are we really exercising here?
Why is it important that I remember what this biological term is?
Right.
I'm studying for biology and I'm spending literally weeks memorizing these facts. Maybe that's not the most useful, it's a waste of time, is what I'm saying.
It's an interesting question. Do you need to teach people? Like biology, I always felt like was purely memorization.
Yeah.
At least the way I didn't go very far with it in school, but because I was like, I'm not good at memorizing things. I don't like doing it. I prefer the other stuff that's a little more applied. But is that the only way to teach biology, or is that just something we're stuck on of like, it's all these words and all these things? Do you need to know the words to understand how it works?
I don't think so, because I didn't. And I think after leaving school, I started to get into religion and how biology and religion, especially with things like evolution, how they really clash, and what evolution actually means and what it tells us about our brains and our bodies and the world. And I'm so fascinated by it. And I feel like there's so much that I just didn't even think about because I was trying to remember what the fucking animal cell is compared to a plant cell, and know that it has a tail that starts with pH something, and
flagella or something.
It's like,
did I just remember that?
Yeah, flagella,
oh
flagellum,
flagellum.
Like, I feel like biology could have been something that I went on to make a career, like, just from reading about evolution.
Yeah,
and being just like amazed by how it works.
But that's my point almost with the, are we a little bit stagnated because, I think the reason a lot of it didn't make sense to us is because we're like, we have Google now. And Google is not the solution, but it's almost an extension of the mind of like, I don't need to remember exactly what the word for this is because I can literally find it probably in like 4 times the amount of times it takes you to think of it.
That's very
I can just type it in, right? So let me focus more on the understanding of how things work rather than memorize 100 different cell types and
we have a computer that can do that.
Right.
We have lots of experts who know that
and
stuff.
We have experts who are working on connecting that directly to our mind. At what point memorization will feel stupid.
Here's a little test that I came across, and I was reading 21 Lessons of the 21st Century, which is very much the idea of how much we actually know versus how much we think we know, and that actually we're drawing a lot of what we perceive to be our own intelligence and knowledge is actually just we're borrowing it from experts or borrowing it from things like Google. So like, would you say that you know how a zipper works?
No.
Crap. Well, let's pretend like you say, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is that everyone knows how a zipper works, as in, you know what it is and what it looks like and what it does, right?
Yeah. I don't know how it gets those two teeth to come together.
Well, you're ruining this example a little bit.
But I was also maybe set up for it a little bit.
Maybe I did.
Yeah.
But most people would say, yeah, I know what a zipper is.
Yeah.
I know how it works. And then the next question is, okay, well, write down in steps how it works. And I don't even know how to, what do you call it? Like what happens?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even know the vocabulary to explain
interlocking
metal pieces interlocking through a piece that is like, I don't actually know what happens, but we just know. I mean, we use it. Someone made it and we use it and it's functional.
Yeah.
How many other things? I have no idea. Like, we're hanging up lights in the office, and I happen to know a little bit about wiring from when I moved into my apartment. But when I moved into my apartment, I was like, I have no idea how a light works.
Yeah.
I don't even know what. I knew nothing.
Yeah.
But we just, we use someone else's.
You can even still understand it in a weird way. You could say, okay, a light has a filament. It passes electricity through it.
What?
A filament.
I don't know what that is.
I think that's the little coil inside the light.
Uh-huh.
And when you pass electricity through thin metal, for example, it heats up.
Yeah.
Right? Like goes red hot or even, right? So that heats up, creates light. And those filaments also, that's why they blow out as well at some point. I can know that. And then someone can go, great, Taylor, go out and make a light. I don't know.
I think the point is also we don't need to know everything, and we need to rely on other people's information. Which is good because it allows us to tackle new questions that haven't been answered yet, and discover new ways of doing things, and innovate and create new technology. And that's how our society
progresses.
Yeah.
Literally, that's how we evolved. If every child started with the same, wasn't allowed to use the information from the previous generation, we'd just be stuck.
Yeah.
But it is funny. Because we're almost at a point now where it's like if you were left, if I could teleport you, time travel back to the 1800s,
would I invent a bunch of
guys,
stuff?
I'm a genius, and they'd be like what? Oh, like iPhones. And they'd be like, great, make one.
Yeah.
And you're like,
what? Yeah. How? I don't know.
You'd be just as dumb as
just
everybody
imagine
else.
inventing a light bulb. I don't think
you couldn't.
I don't think you could do it.
You'd be like, we need electricity. What's electricity? Something about nickel in the saline solution. I know. Maybe somebody get me a saline solution. Maybe we can try to create a battery. It would take forever. You'd be stuck. You'd be just as slow as just evolution itself. That's actually hilarious to think about. I'm sure some people obviously, but like the common person.
Yeah,
you'd be like, what do you have to teach us?
You think you could go back and be like, listen, guys, I know.
Listen.
I mean, I think we could probably do a lot in terms of how the brain works and being able to explain why we experience emotions or why we feel certain ways, and like psychology, things like that. I feel like would be easier to kind of use in like, oh, that person is possessed by a devil or a demon.
Yeah,
that's why they're behaving that way. Well, actually, I know. I don't know.
But that's the thing, right? And then they'd be like, "Well, prove it." Okay, so I need a brain scanning machine. I feel like you'd almost be stuck in this, like you'd just be a crazy person.
Or like if someone is depressed and is showing signs of depression, we know that these are certain characteristics of a depressed person.
Yeah.
Being able to talk to them and get them to maybe do things that would get them out of that depression. Being like, well, you need to be doing physical exercise, and I've been noticing you're not eating what you're normally eating. Yeah. And maybe you should talk. Well, how do you feel? Like, what's going on? Things like that, maybe.
Yeah, but I don't think that would make people go, it's the man from the future. He's amazing. No. But it isn't, yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
I think what it would do, it would make it kind of in the same way that once you know something's possible, it's a lot easier to reach it.
That's true.
So like we know that it's possible to create electricity or to capture reality through a camera.
Yeah.
That we might, I fucking know this is able to work.
Right.
I'm going to find a way.
Right.
And I know like a handful of little things about something happening here.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd be like, silver chloride solution or whatever. And then they'd be like, what's the next step? Like, digital. Oh, what? We need a sensor.
Wow. Well, that went somewhere.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, cool. I think that's perfect timing, actually.
You don't want to quickly do review time?
You wanna?
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah, I'm into it. It's similar to what especially what you were saying that you had been reading.
Review time.
A really interesting book.
Yeah.
Called The Power of Now, which I have read, but it's been like 3 years since I've read it.
Yeah,
It's
The Power of
interesting
Now.
to hear you talk about it again.
Yeah. I've been listening to it as an audiobook because I was getting the other one was getting a little bit dry about Carl Jung. And I was like, you know what, save it for another. If I'm not enjoying listening to it, kind of what's the point?
And if you're also not listening to it,
right?
What a waste of time you could be listening to something.
Exactly. So I found this other one, which is obviously a very popular book. I've heard about it a million times. I was just kind of scrolling through Audible and I was like, you know what, let me start with something kind of easier that obviously is popular and instead of trying to be like, oh, I want to read something obscure and difficult and push myself. It's like, let me just enjoy it to start with before I start, you know?
Yeah.
So I started listening to it and I would go out. There's like a golf course right across the street from here where you can kind of walk into the woods. And then I'd just listen to this book for like an hour on these walks. And this goes back a little bit to something I wish I would have learned in school. And I can't tell you exactly what it is because I'm not all the way through the book yet. But just these kind of concepts that he's not even telling you to do, or really it's just these things you can kind of think about and kind of give you perspective on your own. One of them being that your mind and your thoughts are really not yourself. That consciousness can exist without thoughts, but thoughts can't really exist without consciousness. This feeling of being able to look at your thoughts and emotions objectively, almost from an outsider's perspective, and how hugely helpful that is to deal with anxiety and things like that.
Almost something that's happening to you
right,
rather than something that you are doing.
Right. Simply also the ideas of like trying really hard to exist in the present and being very aware. And all this stuff kind of gets into weird, like, Eastern medicine or like, all this kind of spiritual flu-fla, whatever. But I find it hugely helpful. And he also talks about it. It is not only that, it exists in almost all religious books. And it's just kind of how we choose to talk about them. Like in a church, it would be like a passage comes up talking about how, I forget what the quote was, a flower is the most whatever being because it only lives in the whatever, right? Which is like in the Bible or whatever. But we kind of don't apply, like we hear it and the pastor talks about it and then we'll talk very literally about sort of who it happened to and what the situation was and whatever, but we don't really apply that to our own, or I personally never really thought about applying that to my own life and stuff. And yeah, it's just very interesting concepts that are really helping me at the moment, that are hugely, I'm able to apply them as I'm listening to the book. I'm like, oh, fuck.
So what are you applying? What are you doing?
I think it's purely listening to the book forces you, because he talks about it so much.
Yeah.
You're just so like, you realize how much of your thoughts, and especially for me, I have problems with anxiety and stuff, how much of it is caused by simply me thinking about something that's about to happen or me thinking about something that used to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's almost all of it. It's very hard to be anxious about
something that
right now. Right.
Well,
and then this idea of like, again, it gets a little crazy, but I kind of like it. This idea that the future does not exist. The past does not exist. The past is a remnant trace of a memory that was once the now.
Yeah.
The future is going to be a now in the future. But all these things where it's like, the more you can kind of live in this state of the present, it makes you more content. It makes you more at peace.
I'm reading or listening to as well another. It's not a book. It's like a recorded lecture that took place in like the 70s.
Yeah.
With a guy called Alan Watts, a philosopher and author, who talks about similar things about being present. very into Buddhism, and how we Westerners have this concept of the now being like, imagine you're looking at a watch with a second hand going by, and like, boom, that's now. Like that second hand moving to that position is now, and and like it's this fleeting moment
that can never be.
Yeah, it's never real because it goes and comes before it's even happened. And like, no, that's not really what it's about. It's kind of what you were saying, that whenever you're thinking about something that's not current, as in literally something that's happening here,
right?
If you're imagining something you're going to do later, you're not in the present.
Yeah.
And I don't think the goal is to never think about the future. Obviously, I think it's about being aware that that's what you're doing, and that how often we actually aren't present.
Right.
And how limited that is.
It's almost this addiction that you feed into. This overthinking things, this sort of this anxious state that you can be in, that you're almost addicted to in a way. You're so used to thinking in that way. You're so used to those thought patterns.
Conditioned to think
and
that
you almost
way.
want to feel that way in a sick way almost.
No, there's something,
this weird self-fulfilling
a lot of science behind
prophecy, you know?
Being drawn to your depression.
Right,
and
exactly.
Being like almost more content being in your depression
because
than
it's
being
safer.
Out of it.
It's the known. At least you know that.
It's known, yeah. It's what you're used to.
It's less scary than something that is unknown.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why change is so hard, I think. Because it is more comfortable and more safe to stay, even if you're unhappy with what it is that you are or are doing, it's still less scary than not knowing sort of the outcome of
an inherent fear.
Trying to change something.
Yeah. I was also reading a book called Finding Flow, which I think I mentioned previously, but it kind of relates to this a little bit, which is, it was a book about looking into how and when people feel this biggest sense of what is known as being in a state of flow.
Yeah.
Which basically means being present in the now. That there are certain things, actually, he found through research that there are certain people who just never report being in a state of flow.
Yeah.
They never feel like they're completely consumed by what they're doing. And you can be in a state of flow in so many different things. It's totally different for every person.
Yeah.
Like for me, when we're recording the podcast, I'm 100% right here.
Yeah.
I mean, very occasionally, like when we get up to quickly change the cameras, my brain will move out of flow.
Yeah.
But it's that's why we like doing it, I think, is because we're totally in what we're doing. Or when we are out, we've talked about often when we're out filming, that suddenly we can find ourselves 4 hours later and we will have just filmed a bunch of different shots, which require a bunch of different little tasks to be done. Moving the camera, raising the tripod, making sure it's change the battery. Now we got to frame this shot. Okay, tell the actor to do this and that. And then suddenly it's 4 hours later and we were totally in a state of flow. And it's a great feeling. You can be in a state of flow as a person working in a factory who is so committed to doing the thing that they're doing to the best of their ability because they've decided to think about their job as, I am making a product that is so important for these reasons, and I am very engaged in it that way. Or you can be a factory worker who is doing the exact same thing, but is constantly thinking about when it's going to be over and what I'm going to do when I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the bar and I'm going to have a couple of drinks and then I'm going to go and do this. I can't wait to be done with this. And so you're not consumed by what you're doing, and it's something that we need. You were mentioning that a lot of mountain climbers report being
that was in the book I was reading.
addicted to what they do, not in a bad sense, but because being in a risky situation requires you to be 100% focused and be present
in the present.
Every step you're thinking about, I'm placing it here, I got to put my ice axe here, then the next foot, and you repeat it,
and you
suddenly
forget anything else that could possibly be. Anything feels so stupid in that moment.
Can't think about anything else.
I mean, not that I'm a mountain climber or anything, but I think everyone can relate to the idea of doing something, and when you finish it, it's like things that used to worry you, you're just like, why the fuck did that have any hold over me?
But basically, the goal could be to find as many moments of being in a state of flow as you can during your day. Do more of the things that get you into that state of mind and do less of the things that you are finding yourself not really.
I find flow in very like creative, I think, situations where there's a lot of potential. And I feel like the closer a project gets to finishing, the less sort of potential there is in terms of it going in any which direction. It's more closing in on itself. Yeah. And my states of flow get less and less and less and less until it's just finishing the damn thing.
Yeah, you were saying that with a script, there's this state in the beginning where there's so many possibilities.
Right.
And you kind of get lost in the world.
And you spend hours like, oh, and then this could happen. I'll do index cards, and you'll spread out a ton of index cards, and you're like, oh, this could relate to this. And, blah. And then the last day of writing the script,
everything's
it's very hard to get into that state then, because it's like it's more of a focused. Or not focused.
No, it's like, more of like you have to account for all these other things that already exist.
Right, exactly.
Like if you're
not
looking
as
at
free
it
flowing
as a chronological story, you've already written the beginning and you've already written the ending, and you're working on a part in the middle. You can't just make up anything. It has to be something that matches with what is already existing.
Right.
So in a sense, you're not focused on what you're doing because you constantly have to think about all these other things, which can be very stressful, and like it's not really fun.
It's just not as fun, but it's a necessary. Because I'm saying like the last day of writing the script would just be like proofreading.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm sure somebody could get into a state of flow. And I'm sure for blips you might like 4 pages you're like, whoa,
change, boom.
But I would argue it's a lot harder.
Well, yeah, okay,
than that
proofreading
first day,
is
right?
A little bit more different because it is. Like,
well, I mean, like
it's
the
a very
factory,
mechanical thing, right?
Like the factory worker, sort of. Because I remember I used to do assistant editing in LA. Same shit every day, just digesting the footage. I kind of loved it though. Yeah, I feel like there were moments where it's like I really like that, like getting really efficient at a single task.
Yeah,
and you get so fast, so much faster than anybody else because it's all you're doing all day.
I can relate.
But
to
then
that.
there is a dip off, definitely.
Yeah,
where it's like at some point you feel like I've hit peak efficiency.
Yeah,
it's still fun, but now I need a podcast or something to like.
You're not making progress anymore.
Right.
So it starts to feel like there's not as much of a reason for what you're doing.
Yeah, you need like a reason, right?
So you start to think about. You're not thinking about how to make it more efficient. You're starting to think about other things. So you're not as engaged with what you're doing.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't know about the factory worker. I think it would be fun for like a little bit, or not. It's not even about fun, but I think it would be hard to work in a factory for 60 years.
But it's exactly that. The example was a guy who was totally committed to, well, how can we actually tweak the machine so that it runs better this way? Once we've done that, maybe we should actually eliminate this part of the factory line because it saves us time to have them doing it over here.
So what gets you into flow? Meaning, what's the book trying to? You can't just tell people like be more engaged.
No, it's
care
about
more.
I think it's about observing what you do anyways
and finding what you care about.
It's called finding flow, right? So it's about being aware of when. I was just actually kind of lost in this task.
I see. Bit. So if you're working in the factory and you're unhappy,
do something
else.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what
yeah, not like focus more on enjoying this.
Right, yeah.
But you could maybe change your
But like
perspective.
I said, I enjoy menial tasks like that sometimes.
Right, because I think you're trying to find efficiency.
Right.
So maybe what's something that you don't like doing? Something you find, I just wish it could be taken care of. For me, I hate doing the dishes.
I don't mind, yeah.
Right, but I like doing the dishes now. Phoebe might call my bullshit if she listens to this. I can enjoy it if I listen to an audiobook at the same time because I'm learning and I'm using this time to do 2 things at once.
Yeah.
I fucking love that thought that I'm both doing something practical, I'm cleaning up.
Yeah.
That's a thing that needs to be taken care of, but I'm also learning about something at the same time. So much more enjoyable. And I can actually kind of, oh fuck, I'm done. All of a sudden. Yeah. It's not like, oh my God, I still have half of it left. Oh, I still have, this one's really messy. I'm just going to take a while to do this pot. I don't even think about that if I'm listening to something. Suddenly I'm done. So I think you can take something that you either, if you're doing something that you don't like doing and you can stop doing it, that's probably a good idea. Yeah. But if it's something you have to do, maybe thinking about how you can make it more enjoyable. Yeah. By setting yourself a goal. I want to be able to do it faster.
Yeah.
Or I want to be able to do it a little bit better than I normally do. Or I want to be able to do something else at the same time so that it feels more like I'm just more use of my time.
It'd be hard to do the dishes better.
Right. But you might be able to, I find myself having a very specific system for how to do it. Got to do these items first, because if they lay down on the drying rack, I can place bigger things on top of them and still save space.
Yeah.
And so my brain is obviously starting to try and think of ways to make it more efficient.
I see.
So that things can dry better and I don't have to spread out over the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I've reached a point where I'm not going to be able to do it any better.
Yeah. Look at that man do his dishes. Look at the efficiency.
Unless I started hanging.
Yeah. I think for me, it's more just, I love the routine at the end of the day of putting things away and just that transition from, you eating dinner, everything's kind of messy, everything's kind of laying out. And then it's very much a transition to it's getting ready to go to bed.
So like a wind down routine.
Yeah. And the feeling afterwards of like,
it's done.
This looks nice.
Yeah. Which you're aware of what makes you feel that sense of calm. Like,
yeah, and I think I need an indication to tell me now it's time to start winding down.
So do you do the dishes right before you go to bed?
I do the dishes pretty much. I'll eat dinner, then I will kind of put stuff in that general area, right? And then I'll do whatever I want to do.
Like watch a movie?
It's like well, it'd be after the movie. It'd be after the movie.
So there is like a significant amount of time.
Well, movie is still like awake time.
Right.
For me, I don't watch movies to go to sleep. I mean, I'm
no, me neither.
Wired while I'm watching a movie.
To me, I find that once I sit down to eat dinner, I'm like, like that's the moment. Like I've given the baby a bath. I've put him to bed. I've read him a story. I've taken the dog out. I've fed the dog. I've made dinner if that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I've showered myself. And at that point, I've already obviously gotten home from work and all that stuff. Sitting down for dinner, it's like it's so hard for me to do something after having had dinner.
That's funny. Well, I guess you get kind of tired after dinner as well and stuff. Eating.
So for me to do the dishes right after dinner,
it would be horrible.
It was very hard for me to do.
You do that now?
I almost can't do it. No, I do it in the mornings.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I wouldn't like that, but I maybe eat earlier than you or something.
No.
Maybe just go to bed later.
I just find it hard to switch back into doing something productive.
Because I eat at like 7:30.
Yeah, same.
And then
maybe a little later. I eat a little later.
I'll do my dishes at like 11:30.
Yeah. No, I'm so in a different, I'm in a different.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, I don't like to say I can't.
Yeah.
I obviously can, but
that's good.
That's just something.
Cool.
Okay. That was a longie.
A longie.
Is that a thing?
A
long one.
Look at that longie. Look at that boy's longie. All right, and we'll see you next week on Burning Boat Show. The Burning Boat Show.